My name's Jordan Krantz, also on the St. Louis Rams, and I did Chapter 7 High School and Youth Sports. An overview of how youth sports came about was around the world, specifically with Native Americans. They would teach the youth lacrosse, and African Americans would teach their youth javelin, boxing, and wrestling, while English like to teach their youth cricket. And by using sports and building it early with these kids, this would help promote like good health, because they'd be getting exercise and it'd be a good way for them to be moving around. Character building, because they'd have to learn to work with teams and like other of their peers in order to be successful overall. And competition always brings out the best in people, because when you have someone pushing you to do a little bit more, it usually amounts to you doing the best. And also just integrity and honor, and just playing fair and respecting the people that you're with. The first part of the chapter summary talked about how formal athletic associations didn't begin until the mid-19th century. And starting around then, there was no public schools that offered sports, but private schools were the first that began to offer sports for their youth. When the programs first started off, it wasn't a lot of faculty influence. It was more from the student athletes that really wanted to have these sports implemented, and it did most of the legwork in making it become what it is today and now. The first private school that actually offered youth sports was the Ralph School in Massachusetts, and the first physical education instructor was Charles Beck. For public schools, because they didn't have youth sports yet, they never would get implemented sports programs until the state started mandating it. The chapter talked about non-school youth sports, starting with the YMCA in England in 1844. It was first approved in the U.S. in 1851. The YMCA's main principles were individual values of religion, athletics, and this is the root of where the sports and religions ties came to, that still interlace with sports today. And because the YMCA's early involvement, it kind of spurred this to happen. Other of the youth organizations not affiliated with high schools and just that are on their own, that started off for soccer, there was the American Youth Soccer Organization. Pop Warner football, where a lot of NFL players originally started and got their beginnings. And obviously Little League Baseball, which is getting bigger than it ever is, or ever has been before. The last part of the chapter summary talked about the NHFS, the National Federation of State High School Associations. And this organization spans across all U.S. states, and they deal with regulating equality and fairness amongst high school sports. So they make sure that all the courts are the same length and the three-point line's in the same spot, and they're all playing with the same type of ball and all that stuff, so there's no competitive advantage or disadvantage for one school or another. Through the association, they broke schools down into divisions based on their school size and how many kids they had at the school, and also by region, which is like the location where the school was located. So they would schedule teams to play each other in schools based on where they were located and how many kids were in each school. And they kept that standardized equality all across the board. A statistic that I found was that today in high school sports, it has over 2 million coaches with over 7 million student athletes participating. And in just a little over 100 years, it's gone from just the beginning to all these people participating and caring in the organization. In the industry format for youth sports, the main positions that there are athletic directors, league directors, coaches, trainers and physical therapists, and officials. And the job for an athletic director would be to oversee all the sport activities and schedule games and overall be in charge of and the head of all the teams together. So the coaches would report to the athletic directors. The league director, though, is separate from that because their only purpose is to maintain and oversee all the specific league activity, whether it was women's basketball or soccer or anything, but that would only deal with one section. Coaches' jobs, obviously, is to prepare and build a team, and I'll talk about later some of the problems that occur with so many coaches and so many players that there isn't enough good coaches, but they try to do the best they can to prepare their team to win and do what their goals are. Trainers and physical therapists just deal with health issues because with all sports comes injuries, and when the state mandated it for public schools, they made sure that everybody could get the health care that they need. And officials obviously regulate and control the competition. At the high school and youth level, they don't make as much as they do in the upper levels, and most of the employees only work part-time, but they still do a fairly good job of understanding and interpreting the rules. The challenging issues that they have to face, the main one is that it costs the state to run and maintain a lot of money to keep all these sports going, and in some schools now we're seeing that they have to charge people to join sports teams just because the schools don't have enough money and the state doesn't have the funding. So that just cuts into family costs because now a lot of equipment, sometimes personalized jerseys, if you have to travel to like a tournament or something that's not with the high school, and also injuries if you have to pay the medical bills if you break a bone or something of that nature. It also does put a lot of pressure on younger athletes and encourages them possibly to be getting involved with performance-enhancing drugs, which is obviously a bad thing. And another focus, it takes your focus away in a significant amount of time from academics, which could get these kids into trouble in the classroom, which could prevent them from playing sports and what they need. Title IX is a more recent issue that they have come to face, and pretty much what it did is that if there was a really good basketball program at a school, but they didn't have a really good women's basketball program, then this rule would make it so that they couldn't spend all their money in promoting and helping the men's team, but not help the women, so they have to create this balance, which becomes an issue for them. And lastly, coaches, they're in high demand, but with like low payment and low training. Really, a lot of these coaches are inexperienced and not ready for their position. For me, the career implications for high school and youth sports would be, it'd be a good place to start for like a resume builder to get like an entry-level job and learn some things. And since it's the bottom floor, it's really all the fundamental learning and training that you need. Because you experience working with youth and younger people, it's a really good leadership opportunity, and you get to learn to manage different personalities at a younger level, which could be valuable in the long run. And because it's the bottom floor of competition, you're only facing the lower level in beginning, so it's not as big of a deal if your team does not win immediately, and you can build as a coach.